Okay, so I'm Andy with a bunch of different groups: the Abolition and Disability Justice Collective, Cat 911, Disability Justice Law and Organizing Project. But I'm just here primarily to keep things going along. One of the primary persons working on this is Sanjay Smith with uh, Crip Justice. And we thought it would be a little bit easier if we just showed a video of him introducing kind of the work here. So I'm just going to share the screen that he had recorded previously. Hopefully this will work. There you go.
Hello, my name is Sanjay. I'm the founder of Crip Justice. We work to create life systems for people with disabilities. We are partnered with other organizations like Cat 911 to create alternatives to that work. We are announcing a new project today. We have started a new campaign to free people with disabilities from the jail and institutions. Our first campaign is to free David Shaw. Thank you for supporting Crip Justice. Check out our website for more information. Let's make a better world for people with disabilities.
So thank you, Sanjay. Let's see. So today our format is going to be a little bit casual. We're going to be hearing from the various organizers who have focused on the intersections of disability and punishment, incarceration. And then we're going to hear from people who are working specifically on the campaign to free Derek Shaw and kind of the context happening in Riverside, as well as share some information happening here locally in Orange County, where they're trying to build a mental health jail. So I'm just going to call on people, and people are just going to talk for about 5 minutes or so, however long, a little bit about their work to get kind of a larger context for what it means to be disabled and punished. So, Elliott, would you be up for going next?
Yes. Okay. I'm going to check time quick to make sure I'm keeping track of myself. Hi, comrades. My name is Elliott Fukui, ELLIOTT I am currently on unceded Chochenyo Ohlone territory, also known as Oakland, California. And I have been an organizer for about 20 years. And most of my work has been at the intersection, specifically of queer and trans BIPOC folks, and doing a lot of work to support other folks who have survived psychiatric systems and medicine. I came to the work when I was 15 years old. And the ways that I came into that work were through peer support resources, like resources from the Icarus Project, which is now known as Fireweed Collective. And really getting the opportunity to learn from adults who had survived and who had found ways to support and take care of each other. Sorry, I've been super emotional lately. There's been a lot of loss in community. It's incredibly important for us to support our comrades who are inside. And it is incredibly important for us to highlight what is happening and what has been happening in institutions and homes and houseless shelters and all of the spaces where we find our disabled and neurodivergent communities. In a moment like this, where we are literally in kind of a completely mad world, I also want to say that it is so important for us to turn to the models and the maps that have been left for us by generations of disability justice organizers and freedom fighters. It is important for us to understand and to name that these systems are what are mad and wrong and broken, and that this is not about individuals with madness or individuals with disability. This is about the systems that were set up to segregate us, to target us, and to punish us for not being able to function under a neoliberal capitalist system. I'm going to wrap up by speaking to all the other mad and disabled folks who are feeling grief and fear and scarcity. When we organize, we win. When we speak truth to power, we win. And when they try to close the doors on us in any organizing space, you remember that our people have always persevered, our movements have always been intersectional, and that disabled and neurodivergent people have always been leaders across all of our movements. So don't ever let anybody tell you that you do not belong in a space. And we're going to free Derek. And it's going to be a process. We're going to educate our communities. And most importantly, we're going to love and protect each other, because that is how we have always survived. Thank you all for staying in the good fight. Thank you, Sanjay, for this important work and crip justice. And I'm so excited to get Derek free and all of our comrades free.
Thank you so much, Elliott. Our next person who will be speaking is Azza, who did so much work today to kind of organize this week of action. Without Azza, do you feel ready to go?
I do. Hi, everyone. This is Azza, A-Z-Z-A. I am a Black femme presenting person. I'm wearing a red polka dot shirt and black cardigan, seated on a gray couch with a white wall behind me and big old plastic frame glasses. I am calling in from my home that is on unceded Manahoac territory in Northern Virginia. And I just want to invite others to take a breath. As Elliott said so powerfully, this is a moment in which we are navigating loss, uncertainty, scarcity that is deliberately manufactured, and it's heavy and it weighs on us. So just want to invite folks to take a breath. I come into this work through my own experiences of being institutionalized, medically incarcerated, repeatedly throughout my college years and before, and really finding myself looking for and yearning for community, looking and searching for frameworks to understand not only what I was going through, but what I was observing, what I was seeing happening to people in my community. I'm someone who lives at the nexus of multiple identities that are systematically marginalized as a Black person, as a femme person, as a disabled and mad person, as someone who's Muslim and whose parents are migrants from Sudan, and kind of holding all of those together and looking for a framework that would help me better understand the ways that I was experiencing oppression and people in my community were experiencing oppression. And what I've come to recognize in the course of doing this work is the extent to which carcerality has expanded, the extent to which every single institutional arrangement in this country is designed to uphold anti-Blackness, to exploit and extract labor, to divide and to punish, and to ultimately concentrate wealth and power at the very top. And anti-Blackness as a structure and as a system relies on ableism. And ableism and anti-Blackness work together in order to support and accelerate wealth concentration through capitalism. These are codependent structures, and they are crushing us. And I reflect on the ways that carceral systems are not only expanding, but how they morph to protect themselves. And I have found throughout my own work and my own learning and unlearning that understanding the historical underpinnings of these systems provides me with the grounding I need to understand what I'm called upon to do, what we have to do in this moment. There's so much wisdom in the legacies of resistance, as Elliott mentioned. And there's also a lot of clarity in understanding how these structures came to be and what it will therefore take to dismantle them. And so I think about and reflect on how from the times of enslavement onwards, I'll actually pause here so our interpreters can switch off. Thanks. I think about how enslaved people had their resistance pathologized as a way to exert control and power over them. And I think about the ways that the institutional arrangements that followed emancipation also sought to pathologize as a tool of control, of carceral control. I think about and reflect on the ways that carcerality is practiced within school settings, within our workplaces, how we have come to internalize those dynamics because we all live and are brought up within these oppressive broader structures. I think about the abolitionist teachings of folks like Miriam Kaba and Ruth Wilson Gilmore, and I reflect on the extent to which it is so necessary for us to be connecting individual fights with the broader structures, and to also ensure that our abolitionist work in organizing is done in a way that is internationalist, that recognizes how US empire and imperialism and the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex are really all operating in tandem, and that in order for our organizing to be effective, we have to keep that in mind. We have to be building radical networks of solidarity within our communities and across borders. And we have to really be finding ways to expand the reach of our work, because the structures that are bearing down on us are heavy, they are massive, and it takes the power of our collective work and our collective resistance to ultimately build the vision and build the reality that we want to see, one in which we're all free and we are all valued in all of our complexity and our wholeness. So I just want to thank everyone for being on this call. I want to thank Sanjay and all the organizers who put in so much labor to make this happen. And thank you also to the interpretation team and those doing the captioning, sending everyone love and care and solidarity in these extremely heavy times.
Thank you so much, Azza. So next we have Liat. Are you ready to go?
Sure. Can you hear me okay? For those of you who can hear me.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. Let me describe myself. So I'm a kind of femme-looking person. I have glasses and lipstick. I have short hair that's now increasingly gray. I have earrings that say, you can't see it, but trust me, they say gladiolas, not cages. Gladiola like the flower. And I heard it's spring, so I'm wearing a dress that has flowers in it. So I'm very springy today. And you know, it's also as a form of resistance, very much connected to what Elliott and Azza was just sharing, you know, kind of celebrating being here. It's been a very rough year and a rough decade and century in addition to that. So I come to the work of understanding disability and incarceration as an activist and as a scholar. Oh, I forgot to spell my name. It's Liat, and I don't have a specific signed name. So I come to it as an activist and as a scholar that was and is very interested in connecting movements to each other, and particularly connecting prison abolition to disability movements, you know, earlier iterations of disability rights, for example. And I also do that as a teacher and educator. So I teach in the university setting. I've taught in disability studies classroom, and I teach in criminology, which has been kind of a new endeavor for me, and has been very interesting and very, very hard to teach people who essentially want to be cops, want to be prison guards, and have them, you know, try to have them kind of understand the world differently, not just disability, but other things too. So I don't do that. I do that as an abolitionist. I don't do that as like a form of training cops or something like that. but I want to kind of expand students' worldview beyond what they think they know and want to be at the age of 19, basically. So, and I'm also committed to kind of public education, whatever forms it takes. And I say all this because, you know, this work as an educator also has given me a lot of insight into the kind of things people think and act upon, which I think have a lot of connection to Derek's case and the cases of a lot of people like Derek. So the work that I do is, for example, around what I call carceral ableism or carceral saneism. So for people here who don't know what those words mean, ableism is the oppression against people with disabilities, and TL and Dustin Gibson, who are also on this call, have an awesome definition of ableism, which we can put in the chat. And then saneism is the oppression faced by people who are seen as irrational or crazy or mad. And just as a short form. And what I mean by carceral saneism and carceral ableism is this idea that we, people with disabilities, I identify as a person with disability, we are being used by the systems that Elliott and Azza described. We are being used as or weaponized as a way to create more carceral systems. So for example, to create new mental health jails is a big trend that's going on now, very much related to Derek's case. To create units in prisons that never existed before, so expansion of the prison system because of quote unquote caring for us, the mad and the neurodivergent and the disabled. And so what I mean by carceral saneism and carceral ableism is to weaponize our quote unquote need for treatment in order to do the exact opposite, in order to create more carcerality, more control, and to restrict our lives and often to kill us. And so, you know, this manifests in a variety of ways, including in policing, including in the creation of these new jails or new facilities. But it's also something that happens outside of prisons, the kind of treatments that we're supposed to be receiving for our own good. Segregation, for example, whether it's in education or otherwise, to be biopsychiatry, right? To have our identities looked at as something that's like inherent in us, instead of understanding our identities as mad people, like Elliott was mentioned, as a community of people, as people who belong, as a community of resistance, something that connects us to each other. Instead of that, we are being eliminated by these carceral systems. So there is a desire to eliminate us, you know, not without a fight. So the one thing I want to say is, again, for people here, is it's really important to take down this mantle of carceral ableism and carceral saneism by saying, at least, not in our name. You will not weaponize disability and neurodivergency and madness to increase these systems of death. And you will not do that in the name of treating, and definitely not treating us. And I think that that's you know, a really important thing to do. And one of the things that I try to do in my work that's very connected, and then I'll end, very connected to what Azza and Elliott were saying, is to activate these resistance strategies. So a lot of the work that I do as a researcher and writer is historical, is to try to kind of look back in our history as disabled people and to see what can we activate, you know, in the here and now. And so a lot of my work has been around activating deinstitutionalization, the closing down of psychiatric facilities that a lot of us have been fighting for, to activate that also in the prison context, to say, you know, just because you're taking somebody out of prison and then you're putting them in a psych facility, that doesn't counteract carcerality. That doesn't stop their being controlled. There doesn't stop the kind of genocidal impetuses of the system. That doesn't stop our marginalization. It just puts us in a different kind of cage. And so in order to understand how this form of trans-institutionalization works, I think it's really important to also look at movements that try to abolish it. For example, the institutionalization. So I think I just want to end there by saying that there's a really long history of resistance of disabled, MAD, and neurodivergent people to carceral systems. And I think that it's on us to learn that history and to activate it.
Hello? Sorry, my computer went out there for a second. Our next speaker, Dustin, do you feel ready to go next?
Hey, this is Dustin. I'm a light-skinned Black man, wearing a do-rag, a black sweatshirt, and I have some books in the background. I also have a beard. Just want to thank Sanjay, Andy, the Abolitionist Disability Justice Collective, as well as Crip Justice for organizing this. I just want to speak briefly about a couple people in Pennsylvania, a place where a lot of my work lives, a lot of people there where I've learned abolition and what is actually happening to our people, myself being one of those people for centuries at this point. Want to ground this in like the fact that in Pennsylvania, we have a large population of prisoners that are serving life without parole. We refer to it as death by incarceration sentences. It's about 5,200 people right now, and that fluctuates depending on the day. There's about 2,600 people that were sentenced to life as juveniles in the US. In Pennsylvania, there's only almost 500 of them. Just this past week, there's been a case that kind of, really like gutted a Supreme Court ruling from about 10 years ago that allowed for the resentencing of a lot of the juveniles that were serving death by incarceration sentences. And just on a personal level, knowing that being in community with people that were serving juvenile life sentences and came home and have done incredible work, have been incredible people, and to know that the people that are currently in there now haven't had a chance to get home is like really sobering, I guess. And to know that like even the accomplishments that we win, like there still needs to be a fight. And I say that just, just thinking about the amount of organizing that takes place in prisons, and that it wouldn't be possible for even the first Supreme Court decision that allowed people to come home to take place without that organizing, and really for us on the outside, without us being in community with them. And the two people that I just want to like briefly mention are Mumia Abu-Jamal, that's Mumia Abu-Jamal, and Russell Maroon Schultz, that's Maroon Maroon Shoatz. When I'm thinking about like my maturation as somebody that has like learned what abolition is, but before that, even learning what mass incarceration is, a lot of it has to do with them first being political, and then also politicizing other prisoners, and then putting work out into the world that allows us to understand what is happening inside of prisons, and having foresight to see like what are the next steps that we can take, and making the sacrifice to contend and challenge the state on what has happened to them, even though that would cause them to go into solitary, which both of them have spent decades in, harsh treatment by the prison system. Also with the understanding that the baseline is also a harsh treatment. So they're enduring even more for being political, and realizing like that's the sacrifice they have made, not only for themselves, but for the movement. So I just want to briefly say that Maroon is somebody that is at this point 75 years old. For ever since he's been incarcerated, he has been fighting for his own freedom and the freedom of other people. He's a founding member of the Black Unity Council. He's a former Black Panther. He was incarcerated after a raid of the police on the headquarters in Philly, the Black Panther headquarters. And right now he is in stage 4 cancer. We're fighting for his compassionate release, meaning that under Pennsylvania law, if someone is deemed to be close to death, then they're able to possibly receive a compassionate release, meaning that they won't have to die in prison. So at this point, that's the organizing strategy to free Maroon. Mumia, who has probably been in the same prisons as Maroon at some point, is somebody that was a part of the Panther party in like late 60s, early 70s. He came into the party as a teenager after he was beaten by police in a white mob. He became a journalist. He documented movements. Most famously, he documented what was happening with the MOVE organization in Philadelphia. He was in the early 80s framed for the killing of a police officer. Since then, Mumia's case has been something that has helped the world understand what mass incarceration in the United States looks like at almost every level, from the level of the arrest in which he was beaten on his way to the court or the hospital, from the court itself when they suppressed evidence, from his appeal process when it was governed by judges that used to be members of the Fraternal Order of Police, which is one of the oldest and strongest police unions. And what it looks like for prisoners to have communication blocked, which has happened for decades now with Mumia. But through all of that, he has also written 8, 9, maybe 10 books, given numerous interviews, and has really had a community around him that has helped us understand, every level of his case. So I want to say that in context when we're talking about fighting for the freedom of Derek and getting Derek free, that this comes from a lineage. And it is, yes, 1000% about getting Derek and others out of prison, but it's also about liberating ourselves to understand what is happening and for us to envision new solutions. Mumia right now is somebody that through his bout with Hep C has gotten treatment for other prisoners in Pennsylvania because he fought it. He fought for the treatment and the medication. He's a disabled elder. He has liver cirrhosis, diabetes, most recently COVID. Last week, he had a triple heart bypass surgery. And in that, people had to fight at every turn. just to get him to be able to talk to his wife before the treatment, to be able to talk to his attorneys and his supporters, to let people know when it was happening, how he was doing, where he was at. So I mentioned that to say that, like, at every turn, like we have to be in solidarity with folks that are in prison, and the work that they're doing actually matters for us out here. And when it seems bleak, which it has in a lot of cases with both Maroon and Mumia and a lot of other prisoners, that it offers us like such great insight and the ability to come into movement with each other, which for me personally has been like a staple in a home. And I'm hoping that it's something for other people as well. And I'm gonna stop there, and I'll put some links in the chat for ways to be involved in that. But I'm really just hoping that folks that are working to get Derek free are understanding themselves in a larger context, that it is about Derek, and it is also about people like Mumia, people like Maroon, and other folks that have been fighting for freedom for decades at this point.
Thank you so much, Dustin. Next, we'll be having Leroy speaking about the work of Crip Hop.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm just gonna be short and blunt to the chase. I'm tired. Been an activist since the 80s, Black, disabled. I'm sitting in my living room with a dark shirt on salt and pepper hair, mustache, beard. Yeah, I'm tired, and I realized this last couple of years is that I need to build. I think most of my activists years have been fighting against, but now I'm on a different path to build something for the next generation. That's what Crip Hop Nation is on. So what we're working on now is to build a Crip Hop Institute. So, you know, Black and brown disabled youth can have a place where they see themselves. You know, we have museums, we have art galleries, we have cultural centers, but none of those places really represent disabled people. So Crip Hop wants to open up the institute, Crip Hop Institute, with 3 or 4 floors. First floor will be an art gallery because we hire disabled artists from around the world. I just got boxes in from Brazil yesterday. So we hire Crip Hop visual artists to paint pieces for us, and we've been doing that for 3 years. We do all of our work on SSI dollars because that's what we live on. But we continue to build. So the first floor will be a art gallery space. Second floor will be a music studio because Crip Hop is the music. Third floor will be a library where you can find, you know, disabled authors, Black disabled authors, books, studies, and all that. And we want to partner with a lot of universities to get these books and get these studies. So once again, disabled people can have a space where they can read about their own history. And the last level will be an international for where there'll be computer screens all over the floor where Quipot chapters can talk to each other, like the one in Brazil can talk to the one in the Congo. So we have at least about 10 or 12 chapters around the world. So that's one of the big things that we're hoping to create in the next few years, hopefully in LA. But Quipot work, you know, in the past has been always creating resources for our community. You know, if you talk about police brutality, Quipot was there, and we put out a film called Where Is Hope? And this film was put out right before the Black Lives Matter movement, you can call it movement, whatever. But we put that out. Didn't get any support for it. You know, it's interesting because at the time we went to a lot of national police brutality coalitions and organizations to get support. Really, nobody wanted to support us. And I realized a couple weeks ago, I was like, oh, that's why. Because in the film Where Is Hope? Police brutality against people with disabilities, you take issue on the state answer that goes around every year since 1988, and that's police training. So no wonder that Black Lives Matter didn't want to support it, because they, in the beginning, believed about police training. Matter of fact, they did a little small video for the National Organization of Mental Health, and you know, on that video they propped up police training. So it's not surprising that we you know, didn't get any support at the time. But I want to say that, you know, that resource is online. You know, the film is online. You can go to YouTube, check it out. Just type in Where Is Hope? Police brutality against people with disabilities. You know, I've been in the movement since 1983. In 84, Eleanor Bumper was shot in New York in her own home. So I go back to Eleanor Bumper in New York. So, you know, people always say that, oh, because of cell phone videos and because of the internet, it's a new thing. It's not new. It's been here since I was born. And what is sad is the same cycle has been here since 1984, where you have a couple people fly in and take all the bling bling and fly out and do their thing. So you know, I've seen this since 1984, and that's why I say I'm tired. I'm tired, and I think I know it's time to build what we can build for the next generation and be proud about that. And you know, of course, not stop, you know, fighting against the state, but also we need to create things that could be here and that could be supported and funded in, you know, with our radical and revolutionary thinking and art and activists. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leroy, for all the work you've done all these decades that we're indebted to for the foundation of our work today. Another very amazing person's work is on our call today, TL, and Oz is going to kind of uplift the work of Herd and TL so that we can support their work as well.
Hi, everyone. This is Azza. I'm hearing a bit of a, okay, sorry about that. I was hearing an echo, so I paused. I wanted to come on to uplift the really extraordinary work of Herd, and uplift the incredible organizing of TL, who's on the call, and we're so grateful to have TL in this virtual space with us. And I also just want to name my specifically extreme gratitude for the mentorship that TL has offered me. Andy has dropped a link to Herd's website. But for those of you who are unfamiliar, Herd is a cross-disability abolitionist organization, and it works to unite across identities, communities, movements, and borders to end ableism, racism, capitalism, and all other forms of oppression and violence. And they do it by supporting disabled people and others who experience ableism, by rejecting hierarchies and rigid definitions of disability that are used to gatekeep and shut people out of community, and by recognizing deaf people as part of the disability communities, and to increase collective capacity to identify, understand, and challenge oppression through grassroots advocacy, community organizing, peer support, mutual aid, education, and research. And envision a world where multiply marginalized disabled people are inherently valued and have the resources, safety, and love they need to thrive. And I want to name and uplift that they have been fundraising to support the work of Herd. Herd celebrated 10 years just recently, and you can contribute to support their work in connecting with and organizing in solidarity with deaf and disabled folks who are currently incarcerated, who are formerly incarcerated, and in practicing and applying an abolitionist and disability justice praxis in all that they do. So as I mentioned, Herd's website is on the chat. I want to thank TL for all of the work and organizing done through Herd and elsewhere. And I'm just so tremendously grateful and moved by the example of principled struggle and movement work that TL has offered me and so many others in this space.
Thank you so much, Asa, and thank you so much, TL, and for the amazing work of Herd. Yeah, please, everyone, if you're not familiar with Herd, become familiar and really support that work. So I wanted to thank everyone so far who's spoken, who's provided, I think, as Dustin has said, kind of the larger context by which we can understand why Derek is currently being incarcerated, that this isn't an isolated situation, but it's around these intersecting histories of carceral ableism and racism. And now we're going to shift a little bit about the work that's happening kind of on the ground locally. And our first speaker will be Carrie, who is the mother of Derek, who's going to tell a little bit about the case and how we can get involved in supporting Derek's case. Carrie?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carrie, and I'm Derek's mom, and I'm white with my hair in a ponytail and blue glasses on, and I have some memorial photos behind me of Philando Castile and George Floyd, who were both murdered back in my hometown of Minnesota. And you may see my black cat jumping around in the background here or there too. She likes to comfort me when I'm talking. So it was tough. I think I was triggered listening to Dustin talk about death by incarceration. And I'm going to really put forth a strong effort today to be factual and try to keep my emotions at bay. but it's very difficult to do with the situation with Derek. So on March 1st, 2019, I drove up to our area emergency room, begging and pleading for medical help for Derek. Derek is an amazing, compassionate, loving, gentle young man who had been struggling with mental health for a majority of his life. Started as early as 3rd grade that he disclosed with me many suicidal ideations and anxiety, and just struggled with connecting with the right services or supports. And then as he got older, he wasn't on medication or wasn't receiving any services. So I moved from Minneapolis out to Southern California 3 years ago on Mother's Day. And March 1st, 2019, when I went in begging for help, help was not given by the emergency room. And back home, we call it a 72-hour hold. Here in California, they call it a 5150. They didn't bring out anyone to talk to me, didn't do anything. They actually called Riverside County Sheriffs, who met me in the parking lot. And I think it was more out of concern for the people at the hospital rather than for my son, because I was in a pretty emotional, dark space when I was begging for help for Derek. So that was on a Monday, and Riverside County Sheriff did not go check on my son. They did not send any other services to go to my home to check on Derek when I very clearly disclosed that he had threatened to take his life. He had a plan and he had the means. They waited for 4 days, and on March 1st, 2019, they went to my house and they arrested Derek for having a mental health crisis. And he's been incarcerated ever since. And this is a whole new world for both myself and Derek. And he has not received any mental health treatment. When I've called to complain, I've been told by 2 of the facilities that he's at that he is receiving mental health care, and I've inquired on exactly what that is. And Derek had a release signed for me to communicate with them, and 2 different jails here in Riverside County disclosed that they are providing him mental health treatment by giving him crossword puzzles. And they dismissed me and made me feel as though I was the one with the issue, because I don't understand how a crossword puzzle is mental health care. So Derek has struggled. He has no prior criminal history. He has traveled the world trying to find his voice and his place in this universe. He's a gifted artist, photography. He's traveled everywhere: Nepal, Thailand, Dubai, Greece. And obviously for anyone to be locked in a concrete cage for 23 hours plus a day is traumatizing. But then it only further, I think, exacerbates the mental health crisis that my son was experiencing. And it's overwhelming. And I have to check myself, because right now I'm in a dark place because Derek once again had court delayed. It was supposed to be tomorrow, and they continually delay it. He was denied mental health diversion, and I think it was all part of their plan from the very beginning. They had just ridiculous charges so that he wouldn't qualify for it, and then they set this outrageously high bail. My son's bail is set higher than former police officer Derek Chauvin, who's been found guilty for murdering George Floyd. And my son was going to hurt no one but himself. So I have not been able to afford bail. And just thinking of the amazing treatment and support my son could have been receiving for the last 2 years had they not kept him in this concrete cage. So I have been just amazed by the community support. I went almost 2 years just really floundering, trying to find self-care for me, so that I can stand up and fight for my son. And a couple months ago, I was connected on social media to the amazing people. Many of them are on this call right now. And I'm eternally grateful for the advocacy that they have done for my son. We don't have a network out here. We don't have family or friends who are involved in this process whatsoever. So I'll just take a moment to lift up everybody on this call who has been here to support Derek and myself and who is here today. I'm learning so much, and I know this is so much bigger than this nightmare that my son is going through. And, you know, I need to hear the things that Dustin shared. I need to be learning about these websites because I know it is much bigger, and it's opportunities like this to stand tall and not be ashamed of my mental health or the failures that I have made as a parent in this journey. So I thank all of you for the opportunity to speak today. And I really needed it today because I really was hopeful that tomorrow was going to be somewhat of a day filled with justice. And now court has been delayed again. So I needed this tonight, and I was a little bit late because Derek called. And we never know when those calls are coming. So I have to drop everything. And Derek wanted me to echo the gratitude that he has for everyone lifting up his story and advocating for those who need the support. So thank you so much for the ability to speak and to share a little bit about my amazing son.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for all your work and courage fighting for Derek. And Lisa is going to give us a little bit of a context for how terrible the DA and sheriffs are that kind of tell you what we're fighting against here, trying to free Derek. So, Luis, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Luis Nolasco. I use he, him pronouns. And I'm here tonight sort of representing the Riverside Justice Table, which is a collective of organizations based out of Riverside County that are working towards prosecutorial accountability, mostly holding our main prosecutor, Mike Kestrin, accountable for policies and actions that their office sort of partakes. And so, sorry, I'm on my phone, apologies. So just a little bit about Riverside County. It's a very conservative place in California. I think when folks think about California, sort of everybody thinks it's like a very sort of progressive place and whatnot, but a lot of the extremities of the county, right, the further out, like the more rural counties like Riverside are very, very sort of like still very rooted in like white supremacist policies and leaders. And Riverside is no different than other counties like that. And so I'll keep it brief, right? But our sheriff and DA in the past 2 years have just been on an all-out war against Black and brown folks, from their policies and their views and their tactics. They're literally killing our people right and left. The Sheriff Chad Bianco has implemented just policies around not investigating any sort of uses into police shootings. We just within the past year, and I know that that the Serrano family's here, and that's been one of the terrible sort of local instances where the sheriff is using sort of force on our community members. That's Bernie Serrano, but it's been a sort of a continuing trend for the past year where there has been almost like a monthly officer involved shooting out in Riverside County. This sheriff also didn't believe in COVID, or basically said that people are safer in county jails, and if they didn't want to die from COVID, they should not have committed any crimes, which is just this insane, oh, sorry, apologies. It's just a wild statement on behalf of the sheriff. And our district attorney, also their policies have just been so disproportionately targeting towards prosecuting and sending Black and brown folks to prison. Particularly if you look, for example, the best example we have right now is sort of people who have who their office is seeking the death penalty towards. So since this current district attorney took office in 2016, they've seeked about 20 death penalty. They seek the death penalty for 20 cases, all of which -2 have been Black and brown folks or folks of color. And so that sort of shows, right, the sort of very prevalent racism that is sort of ingrained in these institutions. And obviously that's not sort of exclusive to Riverside, but it feels so much more, it's like, what's the proper word here? Having a moment of trying to figure out the correct English word, but just they have been doing whatever they want, right? Basically, these sheriffs and have been waging sort of an all-out war on Black and brown folks, sending folks to prison. There was another case that a lot of community was supporting earlier last year too, by the name of Mr. Nelson Sims, also a 64-year-old Black man who this office found a way to sentence him to 5 years in prison for just a basic offense, right? And so the reality is, right, that the DA's office here will always try to seek as many enhancements and as much time as it can get away with. And we see that with Derek's case, right? Just the fact that Derek is a Black man, the DA's office here is going to seek as much punishment and as much incarceration as it can get away with. And the unfortunate reality is that more often than not, because folks don't have, the sort of networks or don't know how to navigate these systems out here, they get away with it. But hopefully we're starting to change that through the sort of collective organizing that we're doing through trying to free Derek and other community members. And so that's just sort of a little bit of the background. I guess I'll plug our social media. We don't have a website, but it's at IE Justice Table on Instagram. That is our sort of most active social media handle that we use. And so we're going to be really increasing our presence and really trying to hold the prosecutor's office accountable. And it's not just one person, right? It's not just Sheriff Chad Bianco or Mike Kestrin, but it's just these institutions as a whole, right? They're complicit in the murder of our communities. And so we need to abolish district attorney's offices. We need to abolish sheriff and police, right? Until we do that, our communities are not going to get justice. And so we got to keep fighting. But thank you all for having me today. And thank you, Carrie, for speaking. I think it's always important to, family also speaking, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Luis. Yeah, like the shenanigans we have to deal with in Riverside. Like one example, Sheriff Bianco said the reason why he was not going to reduce the jail population during COVID was, he said, if you didn't want to die, you shouldn't have gotten arrested. So that's what we're dealing with. Another thing we're dealing with nearby in Orange County is this effort to build a mental health jail, literally. So I'm going to turn over to Chelsea Boyle, who can say a little bit about this efforts and how we can kind of support the campaign to stop that.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to everyone who has spoken so far. My name is Chelsea, Chelsa. I am a femme presenting person. My pronouns are she, her. I'm wearing a white top with my hair in a bun and some small gold earrings. And I'm here just to spend a couple of minutes to share about the Stop the Music Coalition that is fighting jail expansion in Orange County. It is a coalition of individuals and organizations committed to fighting the expansion of an empty jail in Orange County. And it's called the James A. Music Facility. Our goal is to cancel the expansion, which would add more than 2,000 jail beds to OC's current jail capacity and cost more than $350 million. We believe in a community that invests in public safety and community wellness through care, not cages. And so as Andy mentioned, OC Sheriff's Department has been calling this a mental health jail, even though there's no plans for mental health professionals to be involved. We know that mental health will not be provided at this jail. Recently, the Sheriff's Department has changed their language and said that it's not going to be a mental health jail. But either way, we know that it's going to further criminalize disabled people in our community, the unhoused, and Black and brown neighbors. So we all know that there are numerous studies that show people with mental health needs decompensate in jails. People who have survived OC jails report the harms of incarceration cannot be improved by building another jail. This is currently an empty jail. They are expanding it. It has been empty for almost 2 years. And it would add 900 new jail beds. So with the addition of the new jail beds and then reopening the jail with the beds that it already had, it would bring OC's total rated capacity to 6,200. And that is all while the OC jail population is currently at a historic low. It's at the lowest it has been in at least a decade. So we know that there is no need for a new jail. And yet Orange County Sheriff's Department always continues to get more money every year. The expansion will cost a lot of money. There are 2 construction companies who were given the contract to do the expansion. Bernard's Brothers construction contract is for about $274 million. And then Veneer Building Management contract is the other company, and they were awarded $4 million, and that has since risen to more than $8 million. So the total cost of construction is about $288 million. And there are other expenses upwards of $9,800,000. We know that they are getting state funding of about $180 million. So that is an outstanding amount of $128 million that's going to come from Orange County, in addition to $61.5 million annually as operating costs to keep up the jail. So in summary, it's going to be 900 new jail beds, 2,200 newly available jail beds. It's going to cost $288 million in construction costs with an annual operating cost of $61.5 million. All while we are at a historic low with our jail population. So if you want to get involved, we do have an event coming up on Thursday, June 3rd from 6 to 7:30. And that's going to be a workshop on who's in OC jails, an examination of racial disparities in OC jails, featuring a new report from Million Dollar Hoods. And I can share our social medias in the chat, but if you want to get involved, you can find us on Instagram at Stop the Music Jail, on Twitter at Music Stop. We also have a website, stopthemusic.com, but I'll put all that in the chat. And I want to thank you for giving me the time to share about our coalition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. And also, I was just talking to Daniel Cowie, who's currently being incarcerated in Orange County, and asked if I could share his thoughts about the Stop the Music campaign, since it's kind of being done in his name. He worked so hard to access mental health services, and precisely because he was successful, all the agencies withdrew the services and said, you don't need them anymore. Right, so they took away the services. This led to a crisis where he got arrested, where he's been in jail, like Derek, for 2 years. And he just wants people to know instead of giving this $300 million to a jail that's doing absolutely nothing to support his mental health at all, maybe you could just actually provide the services he needed in the first place. So, and also, as I mentioned before, if you go to Crip Justice, we're focusing on Derek's campaign, but actually there's a form there. So if there's anyone you know who's incarcerated and who has a disability and needs support in any way, either a defense campaign or needs letters of support, there's a form and you can just fill out, and we'll add the names as we're going along. It's just getting started through Crip Justice. And so Daniel's name, as I mentioned, will be up there. He could use support because they won't give him his medically prescribed diet. So he's having to spend all his commissary funds just to get basic food that he needs. So before we close with Andrea Ritchie, who was so gracious to join us today, I'm putting people a little bit on the spot, but we do have a couple of people here with the campaign for justice for Ernie Serrano. So I did want to leave some space if you would like to talk a little bit about the work that you're doing to get justice for him.
Hi, this is Mary. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Mary Valdemar, Maryvaldemar. I'm female, presenting she, her, ella pronouns. Chicana Indígena, brown person, wearing a red cardigan and curly, mostly white now, hair. And behind me is some artwork from some of our social justice work with a lot of different intersectional movements, immigration, environment, police brutality, healing, trauma, decolonizing, for lots of different folks from different communities and backgrounds out here in the inland region. But we've been doing that work for quite a while. I'm with the campaign team for Justice for Ernie Serrano, where we have been working on exposing also the antics of the Sheriff's Department here, Riverside Sheriffs, especially Sheriff Chad Bianco. I put some links in the chat of how folks can get connected with the Ernie Serrano case and get involved. But I just want to really kind of add a little bit to the conversation around prisons for mental health, and also maybe bring to light an intersection between another privatized prison area that we see happening in the region, which is detention centers, right? The privatization of prison for detention centers, and the move to also, as we fight those detention centers, see those same types of facilities and corporations popping up for mental health, for other areas, and hopefully understanding that these are connected, and the idea of these, whether they're private or public prisons, these specialized prison programs or projects or facilities, whatever they want to call them, are a move to continue funding prison industrial complex, even though many of us who have been doing justice work have long accepted and acknowledged, the prison industrial complex was intentionally, supported by local leaders, politicians, corporations, decision makers at almost every level, right? And we see that happening yet again, yet and constantly within the inland region, as we also fight warehouse development, as we also fight all the things that our communities don't want here. We don't want more prisons. We don't want, the type of mental health that they're proposing. We want real mental health. We want real holistic health for everyone, decolonized health, where we go back to the ways of our indigenous people, of the indigenous people of these lands that we are on currently, where folks who had different divergent thinking or, different understanding of the world were treated as having insight, as having a gift, as having not less than, but more than some of the communities that were tribal, pueblo, barrios. It wasn't looked at like the stigma that we see today in the Western paradigm. And we know the first case of police brutality we experienced in 1492 when this land was colonized. And so I think it's important that we understand what happened to Ernie in a market in Stater Brothers, what happened to Taisha Miller in a parking lot in Riverside, what happened to Derek, what happens to all of these folks is a part of the same problem, the same struggle. And that is, a struggle about, oppression and control and money and resources, and stealing those resources from communities who look to liberate and empower themselves. And so, we come to this like conversation very humbly with respect for all the organizers who've been holding it down for decades and decades. But we know, especially in our region, the stakes are getting higher as the decision makers continue with impunity to make bad decisions for a community that the public is not asking for. And to really capitalize on, a tone of white supremacy and greed for some folks to continue to make money on the backs of people of color, Black, brown, indigenous, disabled, migrant, like, all the different folks we know who deserve and have the right to liberation and freedom, autonomy and independence, health and holistic well-being, emotional health, mental health, social health, all of it. And these decisions are not by accident. These decisions are not, an anomaly. It's how it has been for a long time. And we know that what we need to do is disrupt that system. So we've been doing that every month at the monthly memorial in front of Stater Brothers. We will continue to do that as we connect and build with other justice families from all over Southern California. The most recent being Angelo Quinto, who also killed by police in Antioch, suffering from a mental health crisis and just completely ignored from any support, resources, compassion, or healing. And that's really what we come down to it when we look at, what needs to change for our communities and where we need everyone to kind of meet us in the middle, which is how do we build the system that we do want when they continue to offer us systems and solutions that we don't want. And then I'll just close with saying, recently I was in a conversation with a local senator here, Senator Leyva, and the sheriff's department. They had like a town hall with the cop kind of thing. And I went to that, and I actually, in this town hall, they actually admitted that they were criminalizing folks struggling with mental health crises just purely from a lack of beds and that it was a statewide problem. They openly admitted that and talked about it as though it were just a matter of fact that was not something to be concerned about. They did express concern, but for me, it really shines a light on the issue that they know that they're a problem. They know they're criminalizing people that do not need to be in prison. They consciously know that, but the struggle to create a solution is more work than it's worth it for them to do, I guess. Like, I'm not sure why that hasn't been solved if it's a known problem. And I think that's where all of us who are doing this fight at different levels, we need to come together and really just develop our own solution. What is our solution? Empowered by the community, empowered by the people, and forget the decision makers, forget the politicians, forget the sheriffs. They can be out of office, boot Bianco all day, every day. But at the end of the day, the next sheriff in there is not going to have the solution either. Like, we have to have the solution. And I think hopefully there's some genius and incredible folks in this room, in this Zoom room, and hopefully together we can come up with that solution together for our communities. So thank you. Aho.
Thank you so much, Mary. And kind of to close us out for today, Andrea Ritchie, who's done such important work on kind of intersections of gender, race, disability, and incarceration and policing.
Thank you so much for having me in this group, Andy. And I spell my name Andrea, A-N-D-R-E-A, Ritchie, R-I-T-C-H-I-E. And I use she pronouns, but I'm fine with any. I'm a very light-skinned Black woman with curly hair and purple glasses in front of a purple background. And I actually feel really humbled to come into this conversation. I'm not from Orange County, and most of what I'll say I learned from people on this call, from Leroy Moore, from TL, from Dustin, from Liat, from Sanjay, and from Andy, and just learned so much. I'm sorry I came on late, but learned so much from this, what we just heard and talked about. And I just wanted to maybe say some things and apologize if they've been said already, but it feels like there's such a through line here in terms of exactly what Mary just said, in terms of the solutions that are being offered to what we know is the inherently anti-Black ableism of this country and of policing generally. And then how the response is, oh, well, you know, we should train cops better to respond to mental health crises, when, as you know, Mary was just saying, like, they know what the problem is and the cops will continue to do it regardless of training because of the value that they put on Black disabled lives and that they're about enacting anti-Black ableism. And then the solution that gets offered is, oh, well, first of all, that we have to focus on the point of response to a crisis as opposed to the healthcare universally available in all forms, in accessible ways to everyone, that's affirming, including affirming of the dignity of risk and of the humanity and agency of disabled people, and having that available everywhere such that we wouldn't be at, and all the material needs in people's lives that, if once met, reduce the likelihood of being in a mental health crisis. And then when we do focus on the response is cops and cops fighting to keep their role in that response, maybe with a co-response model. I'm sure you all talked about that, and that this is you know, one of the many consequences. And then one thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm sure you all talked about it before, but the notion that there was a diversion program available, but that what was chosen was incarceration, to me really illuminates the problem with diversion programs as a solution, when cops and prosecutors, like the one that you just described, control everything about who gets in. And we know that those decisions are made with the same anti-Blackness and disregard for disabled people's lives as every other decision in the criminal punishment system. But then also to highlight, like, the diversion programs are not what we need either, right? We need care, not courts, not a mental health court. We need mental health care and meeting basic needs. And then obviously you all talked about then what happens inside in terms of the fact that you can't get care in a cage, and that people are justifying reactivating closed cages and building new cages under the pretext of providing care. And so I feel like when we're in movements to defund police and fund community safety, it's all of those points that we have to intervene on, and also the point that the issue is about what the response should be, as opposed to what should be available to all people at all times to prevent crises from happening in the first place. So those are some things I've learned from many people on this call tonight and over many years, and what's informing my work and supporting Free Derek. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, evil twin. Anyway, so I think we're out of time now. But thank you to all the speakers sharing kind of the larger context with what's happening with Derek, as well as people involved in trying to free Derek. So if you are interested in kind of what are some other community-based possibilities, I put the information for CAT 911, and we also developed an abolitionist curriculum for addressing mental health crises. And these are things, it's open to anyone. Take it. We're not copywriting it. If anything's helpful, you can just run with those resources. And there is actually a CAT 911 Riverside group if you're interested. The email there, I think it's put in the chat, Riverside cat911@gmail.com. And finally, you see the thing to sign Derek's petition for his freedom. So please sign that too. Keep watching Crip Justice for Derek's case and any other cases that you know about that you want support for. So otherwise, just thank you all so much, and we'll keep on going until everyone is free. Thank you so much and have a great evening.